If you have comments or questions as I'm speaking, please just put them into the chat and we'll get to those at the end. The title of my talk is Embracing Urban Hiking, and I really want us to adopt that spirit this evening. Let's talk about embracing urban hiking and the idea of really embracing where we live. And where are we right now? Honestly, we're mostly at home. This is something that the state and others have advised us to do. Of course, we're staying at home during this pandemic. And although we're being advised to go outside, to hike, to walk, to do the outdoor activities that we enjoy, we're also being strongly advised to do that close to home. So we're being advised to recreate locally. And if you're in the Denver metro area, including Boulder, we're not supposed to go to the mountain communities. And we're even supposed to reduce our visits to the trails and open spaces in the foothills. So all of those restrictions are really new, and they can cause those of us who are avid outdoors people anxiety, sadness, stress. And I want to acknowledge that for those of us who really treasure and enjoy being in the outdoors, this is a really tough time. And I also want to acknowledge that for those of us who are listening tonight, and certainly for myself, I'm immensely grateful that the only thing I have to worry about right now is just managing where I go and not being too worried about other things. So for some of us, this is a gift of time to go inside and to really think about, where do I get the most joy when I wander? Where do I love to hike the most? And how can I bring that spirit into where I'm restricted to be these days? So with that idea of recreating locally, I found myself actually going inside and thinking about, okay, I really identify as a walker, but also as a hiker. And I've kind of gone back into this time of just thinking about, how did I form that identity? And that's something that maybe you can do as well. Kind of look at what made you a hiker, what made you an active and avid outdoors person. And for me, it really goes all the way back to my early childhood. My parents were very active outdoors lovers. We had a piece of property in Park County outside of Fairplay. When I was a little kid, that's me on the left, when I was about 4 years old, playing around at our property. There was a mountain lake there, streams, trails. I remember playing with the tadpoles in the lake. I also remember the mosquitoes, not my most favorite part of that area, but it really helped form who I was, as did all of the amazing hikes that I went on with my family. My mother took my brother and me out on hikes frequently in Rocky Mountain National Park and Jefferson County, where I grew up. In the center photo is from a hike in kind of the Douglas County area. And I have also actually been hiking in Boulder ever since I was a little kid, even though I didn't grow up in Boulder. The picture on the right is from a hike that we took to Mallory Cave. So it's on the Mallory Cave Trail here in Boulder. And I was about 9 years old in that picture. And that hike in particular is really sacred and special to me because we were hiking with a friend of my mom's who encouraged my love of storytelling. And we were hiking up to Mallory Cave, and all along that hike, this friend of my mom's encouraged this conversation about little fairy creatures along the trail. So I actually made a little hut and some other kind of little creations for Mallory. And I ended up going home and writing up the story of Mallory on the Mallory Trail. Mallory Cave Trail. And it really, it helped form who I was. So all of these experiences as a young child gave me the identity of not only being a true Colorado girl and an avid outdoors person, but really a lover of Colorado's hike country and all of the beautiful trails that we usually have access to. So when I became a parent in 2012, my husband and I started taking our son out too, of course. We're both avid hikers. And so we have taken him out to places from, Rocky Mountain National Park all the way to Switzerland. This photo was taken in the Alps on a family vacation in 2014. And on that hike, I remember being absolutely awestruck by not only the majesty of the views, but also the wonders that were there that I had never really experienced before all at once. So there were paragliders going over the peaks. As we walked around on the trail, we rounded a corner and there was a little chalet there where you could get a drink and stop and get some refreshment. There were beautiful little alpine flowers. There were some interpretive signs telling us what we were seeing along the way. And it was this very magical moment. And I want you to just take a second, just take a minute here and put yourself into one of your favorite hiking experiences anywhere in the world. It could be here in Colorado, could have been on a vacation. Just take a moment to find that place that you really, really love and put yourself in that memory. Imagine what it smelled like, what it felt like, what you were seeing, what you could hear, all of the senses that you brought to that experience. Just take a moment to get in that place. I'm going to put myself in this place in Switzerland when it was just such an incredible experience. And I want you to take the fullness and the kind of the full presence of that moment and that experience into the rest of this talk as we think about bringing and translating that feeling of awe and wonder and curiosity and delight, actual physical and mental delight, into our experiences in cities. So I have always been a hiker and an outdoors person. But I've also always been a city lover. My mom took my brother and me on trips all around the country. In fact, by the time I was out of high school, I had visited all 48 of the contiguous United States, and we had visited great cities, we had visited national monuments, hiked the Grand Canyon, we had done all kinds of things. And I was really grateful to my mom for giving me that foundation. And then by the time I was 25, I had visited all 50 states, and I went on to just explore and dive into the world. In fact, I became so enamored of cities that I became an urban planner. I got trained in urban planning. And I really started paying closer attention to what it was that brought me joy in my urban experiences. So I've visited cities all around the world, from Paris, which is pictured on the left, to Buenos Aires, which is pictured on the right. And obviously I love urban maps and mapping systems and seeing how people use those. And it's always been really interesting to me to see what gets onto the maps and what doesn't get onto the maps, and how you can have experiences blending both the kind of mapped reality, the sort of legitimized reality of the city, and all of those wonderful little insurgent experiences you can have in cities, going through tiny alleyways, connecting dots that maybe the map makers never expected you to connect. And when we're traveling, we can summon or naturally experience that same kind of delight that we experience in the most profoundly beautiful natural areas. I have probably tens of pictures of utility covers. The picture on the left is of a utility cover in Budapest, and I just thought it was gorgeous. You know, every little detail when you're traveling can be absolutely beautiful. from the streets to the utility covers to graffiti on a wall. For a while, I lived in Nairobi, Kenya, and the picture in the middle is part of my daily walk to work, and I was absolutely delighted by the color of the red soil that I would see as I was walking, and the way that the sidewalks sort of appeared and disappeared. And I was also really fascinated by that disembodied head that's pictured on the left part of the photograph. No one can ever really explain to me how it got there or what it stood for. But these little things are kind of delightful and fascinating when you're in a new place. And even a rusty graffiti covered door can be a fascinating moment to stop, take it in, and experience that same kind of delight that you get wherever you are. That's someplace new. So when I'm exploring cities and traveling, I really gravitate to urban trail systems. And in a lot of places, those urban trail systems are laid out through beautiful natural areas, like the photo on the left, which is from Vancouver, British Columbia. And there's a part of the city that is owned by the University of British Columbia, and it's called the Endowment Lands. And it's a vast acreage of just second growth. It's not old growth forest, but it's second growth forest. And it's got trails laid out through it, and you can get lost in there for a day or more. And I have a few times. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's easy to forget that you're in the middle of a big city. You can get lost in these gorgeous pathways and experience the smells of the cedars, listen to the raindrops through the trees, hear the birds, watch a banana slug crossing the trail, listen to the crunch of the trail underneath your feet, and fully and completely connect to yourself and to that place. It allows you to have that amazing, awe-inspiring experience. So that's one way the urban trail systems are laid out. And here in Boulder County, as I detail in my book, our urban trail systems are laid out more on open space, where it's not necessarily, deep forest, of course, but it's really through grasslands and agricultural lands and a variety of kinds of open space. And we're very fortunate to have as much of that as we do. The photo on the right is from a different kind of urban trail system that I also find really intriguing, which is a cultural trail system. So in Krakow, Poland, there were these signs for various routes, and they were specified thematically. This one was the university route, so a lot of centers of learning in this very old city, and sites that you could visit that were mapped out, and you could see this same kind of university route map all around this particular route. And there was even some colorful marking on the pavement to help carry you through. So those sorts of cultural trails are also really fascinating to me. The way that we can mark time and the way we can mark our cultural values and our heritage. And so I've tried to kind of blend these things in my own urban hiking philosophy. And if you don't know Liz Thomas, I'll read this quote from her. This is from an article that she published just last week called "City Hiking is What We Need Right Now." And the quote says, "It's all forms of hiking take you places that are different from what you see every day. Urban hiking stimulates your brain to realize that it's doing something new. It's a way to tell your brain that it needs to pay attention." And whether that's paying attention to the natural environment or the cultural environment or a wonderful blend of the two. So Liz Thomas is a famous thru hiker. She has hiked the Triple Crown. In fact, she got the fastest women's time for the Triple Crown, which is the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. And she wrote this fantastic book called Long Trails, Mastering the Art of the Thru Hike. So if you're interested in bigger, longer trails, that's a great book. But she has put a lot of her energy lately into designing and creating urban thru hikes, where, you know, these are multi-day explorations. They can go for 150 to 200 miles, just putting together these wonderful sites in cities. So from parks to, you know, public staircases, I mean, all kinds of things. She just did one recently, designed one in New York City, and she designed one for Denver called the Denver Brew Through, which I thought was really fascinating. It incorporated like 40 different brew pubs along the way. So that was a really creative way of thinking about how are we stimulating our brains to pay attention to something new when we're exploring areas that are not necessarily new to us because we live there. So for me, the best way to learn how to kind of bring all this stuff together, my love of the outdoors and hiking long distances and hiking in beautiful natural areas, with my love of cities and helping people learn more about how their cities are created and made, was to become a member of Walk to Connect. I first became a volunteer and I started leading walks and hikes here in Boulder with Walk to Connect, and then we became a cooperative. This photo was taken in 2016, right after we became a cooperative organization. And I was so compelled to join Walk to Connect because the person on the far left in this photo, Jonathan Stalls, he he founded Walk to Connect after hiking 3,300 miles across the United States, and then having hiked the one of the long trails in Spain, the Camino de Santiago. And he brought back with him this awareness that we desperately need connection, not only to places, but also to each other and to ourselves. We are so atomized these days and far from each other that we really need to come together around a shared experience, walking or rolling. These are things that all of us can do. So I started leading walks and hikes in Boulder with this amazing group of people, the Boulder Ramblers, and I started having a great time just exploring my city and learning how other people experienced it and learning where they wanted to go. And I have one person in particular to thank for all the amazing adventures that we've been able to have with the Boulder Ramblers. And that's the person on the left in this photo, Roger. He had been a marathon runner and even an ultra marathon runner. He ran ultra marathons in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California for a long time, and he had this amazing community out there. And he had slowed down just a little bit after he moved to Boulder with his wife. He had had a hip replacement and needed to, give up marathon running, but he wanted to really stay active and keep developing his community. So he joined our walking group, and he became an incredible inspiration for me and for many of our members. In fact, I sat down with Roger when I got the invitation to write the Best Urban Hikes Boulder and consulted with him on what to include in the book, because he spent most of his time, he's now moved to New Zealand, unfortunately, but a couple of years ago when I was working on this really intently, he was walking all of the regional trail systems and going far, breaking boundaries, connecting trails in new ways. And he inspired all kinds of adventures that the Boulder Ramblers have had, including our Walk 360, which is a 26-mile loop all the way around the city of Boulder. But many of the trails that I include in the book were inspired by Roger, including the Coal Creek Trail and the Rock Creek Trail. Our group has tended to hike the Coal Creek Trail from Boulder to Louisville, where we stop and have lunch. But in the book, I turned it around and invited people to go the other way toward the mountains from Lafayette to Superior, which I think is a really fun adventure. So we can really create community through walking. And that's something that Walk to Connect stands for, which is creating those connections to ourselves and to others and to places. But now that we're staying home, we're really not allowed to congregate in big groups. We're staying apart from each other to keep everyone safe. How can we connect more consciously and more creatively to ourselves and those familiar places right where we live? Remember to bring that hiking energy, that place that I asked you to conjure at the beginning of the presentation into these ideas that I'll present to you. So for me, this all really got started when I joined Walk to Connect and Jonathan led a 9-mile walk through the city of Boulder that took me to parts of the city I had never seen before. And I've lived here in Boulder for 9 years now. So this was back in 2015. When I had only lived here for a few years, but we took a route that was new to me, and it just connected assets and wonderful things that I had never even thought about. And this graffiti was in the canyon underpass between Eben G. Fine Park and Settlers Park, and it says, "Let your heart lead the way." I have tried to really bring that philosophy into everything that I've created with the Boulder Ramblers by remembering those the presence and the joy of exploring beautiful natural wonders into the city, and imagining how can I really cultivate that same curiosity, that same delight that I experience when I'm traveling and when I'm in a spectacular place. I mean, Boulder, by its nature, is a spectacular place. So really, I mean, we're really lucky to live anywhere in Boulder County and to have the natural wonders that we have right at our fingertips. But this idea of letting your heart lead the way can be taken very literally, as I did in the book. One of the hikes in the book is called the Lovin on Boulder Heart-Shaped Loop. And if you look at the map, it's not a perfect heart by any means. It's sort of a squished heart, but it's the closest shape was a heart. And it reminded me of what I love about this hike, which is the great views that you get from the top of Enchanted Mesa and Four Pines, the amazing kind of cultural insights you get by passing a graveyard where some famous people are buried, the interesting little outposts that people have put, like little free libraries, and of course the historic Chautauqua Park, which is so fascinating, and just some amazing natural places. So this idea of bringing your heart, your wonder, your delight into exploring right where you live is not only something that we need to do right now, but it's something that we can take great joy in doing. Gretel Ehrlich said, "To see and to know a place is a contemplative act. It means emptying our minds and letting what is there in all its multiplicity and endless variety come in." That means seeing where we live, seeing our neighborhoods and the areas really close to where we live, not even going up into the foothills, but just right around where we live, right outside our front doors. How can you experience the multiplicity and endless variety of right where you live? And again, bring that delight, that wonder, that curiosity that you bring to places you travel to. So the way that I've done that, I'm just going to give you some routes that I've created for different audiences. These are not in the book. It's just the way that I think about urban hiking, which can range from under a mile to 26 miles or more. And I've created routes for groups like Growing Up Boulder, which this route was created for. It's called the Super Saturday Family Stroll. And it starts at Whittier Elementary School and incorporates public art and some kind of street art and lots of interesting little things. That dinosaur, you actually have to lift up a tree branch to find the dinosaur. It's behind a very creative chicken coop. And so there are some wonders on this hike that are just right inside the city and that would keep young children moving with their parents. So, you know, if you need something to do with your kids, finding a route and just kind of letting yourself wander and look for things at the child's level is a great way to explore your city and your neighborhood just with fresh new eyes. All of this really is about seeing like a child and experiencing your city like a child, kind of seeing it in a new way. Another new way to see your city is to connect the dots about a particular theme. So for Winter Walk and Bike Week this year for the city of Boulder, I created the Boulder Mural Sip and Stroll. We started at the Innisfree Poetry Bookstore and Cafe, and we visited 14 murals that have been curated by And Art Space. So these are all public art murals that have been curated and put up around the center part of the city, really accessible, 4-mile walk. So that's something you could look for right now. Where are those pieces of art that you can connect? What can you learn about them? This would be another great family walking experience. And sometimes urban hikes are actually kind of time capsules. You know, you might develop a route that you really love. You might have a pattern that you like to walk in your neighborhood, and then it gets disrupted by construction or some other change in the landscape. So this route called the 6 Parks in 6 Miles Loop. It's one that I created with the Boulder Ramblers, and you can see the parks indicated by the trees in the map on the left. But this is a hike that we will never ever be able to do this way again, because the overpass that we're pictured in on the top photo there has been torn down. It's now being made into an underpass, but that won't be available for another, you know, several months. So you know, we'll never ever do this hike the same way again. And actually, Liz Thomas says that an urban hike shouldn't be something necessarily that you do over and over again. Even with a route like this that you might grow to love, you can switch it up a little bit by turning left instead of turning right. Finding another park. There are definitely more parks within walking distance of these 6. So other ways to kind of rethink your neighborhood, rethink your city. One of my favorite routes that I created for the city is called the Ramble to the Rayback Collective. Those of you who live in Boulder know about the Rayback Collective probably. It's our beloved food truck park and bar, and it's a great place to walk to or to bike to because it's right on the Goose Creek path. And you could get there very directly. You know, you could actually plug in your location and the Rayback Collective on your phone or any other destination that you want to explore. And it'll route you in the most direct way. But urban hiking is not about efficiency. It's not about directness. It's about exploring. And it's truly about incorporating all the points of interest that you possibly can. So in this hike, I did that by starting at the main Boulder Public Library and walking through Eben G. Fine Park, up the Red Rocks Trail to the top lookout over the kind of Mapleton neighborhood. And along the way, we found interesting little things like this sharing box that's pictured in the middle photo on the left. We found several other things like that, homemade signs that people had put on their lawns, swings in the front yard or in the right-of-way that passersby could use. We go through parks, we go up to high points. This route also goes through Lovers Hill Park. It goes down a public staircase. So there are lots of things that are interesting to discover and to incorporate into the hike without getting there in a direct way. And you get 4.5 miles of exercise, so that's great. In the book, those are the routes are quite a bit more direct. So the Lovin on Boulder heart-shaped loop, and there's one more called the North Open Space Lollipop in Louisville that are more of the kind of creative routes that do incorporate some street crossings. But for the most part, the hikes in my book are on established trail systems that are really easy to navigate, and they're safe and easy to navigate for visitors and for residents alike. So they don't necessarily incorporate all the different hidden things, but the maps that I just showed you give you a hint about how to kind of take that into a daily walk, just right outside your door. The book covers Boulder, Lafayette, Longmont, Louisville, Niwot, and Superior, and a lot of really accessible trails that are easy for people who are using strollers or wheelchairs. And we had to cut 3 of the hikes from the book. So if you've purchased the book, or if you do purchase the book, if you email your receipt to besturbanhikesboulder@gmail.com, I'll send you a PDF with those 3 bonus hikes, plus the 3 hikes that we cut, plus one more bonus hike that I included. So those are some more fun hikes for you to do. All of this philosophy that I've described about being curious, bringing that delight and joy from your greatest adventures into your own neighborhood, is what we at Walk to Connect call life at 3 miles per hour. It's our organization's motto. And to us, life at 3 miles per hour really means connecting to others, to places, and to ourselves at a natural human pace. That 3 mile per hour pace is a normal walking pace for most people. You know, individuals can walk faster than that. As a group, we tend to walk about 2.25 to 2.5 miles an hour. But 3 miles an hour is a typical walking pace. And it's not just about walking, though. It's also about bringing 3 miles per hour into your whole being as a philosophy. So into your thinking, into your working pace. If you're thinking about life at 3 miles per hour, and if you're really incorporating that into what you do, then you're bringing that openness and a slower approach where you can actually access that great delight and that curiosity and cultivate that. You know, when we're rushing by places at even 15 miles per hour on a bike, or certainly at 50 miles per hour on a car, we are not fully experiencing the places where we live. You know, on those hikes that I just described, you'd never actually stop and look in a little free library, or participate in the sharing box, or write a note to a neighbor, or engage any of those wonderful invitations that are offered along the way. Walking or rolling in a wheelchair actually allows you to consciously engage, to consciously connect. And you can connect with yourself and with the place these days by really taking that idea of, okay, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to remember, I'm going to put myself in that wondrous experience that I had in my favorite place to hike. And I'm going to bring that into my daily walk in my normal neighborhood. So when we do that, when we consciously absorb the idea of life at 3 miles per hour, we claim ourselves as walkers. I created these I'm a walker signs for Walk and Bike Month with the city of Boulder. And people have, you know, taken delight in holding them up and taking them home, because you have to actually make that claim. You have to say, yes, I am a walker. We are all walkers at some point during the day. Even if you are a amazing, you know, through hiker and you love going to the mountains every weekend, you're still a walker when you get up and you get out of bed, and when you walk to your car, or when you walk to the bus. So claiming that and knowing that I'm a walker allows me to look more carefully and to really be fully present where I am. That means engaging in the invitations, like the little free libraries, the note stations, the chalk art drawings that people are leaving for us now. And here in Boulder, we have a beloved street artist who goes by the moniker of Smile. And his artworks are always, popping up in new places, getting erased from others, and kind of moving around the city. And those kinds of things are also really fun to look out for. Is there a graffiti artist, or a street artist, or just someone who leaves some beautiful painted rocks around in your neighborhood? What can you find, or how can you help to create those invitations for your neighbors to help keep their delight alive during this difficult time? Sometimes that also means walking in places that we wouldn't normally think about putting our bodies, whether that means in streets. So right now, a lot of cities, Denver included, are slowing down streets and creating more space for pedestrians. So that actually makes the invitation to walk your neighborhood and your immediate local area even more attractive, because you feel safer. This photo was taken during our 26-mile Walk 360 urban hike on the US 36 bikeway. And it's a highway for bikes. And it's not a place that people normally walk in great numbers, but it's certainly accessible to pedestrians. And we have to remember that. Where are those places that are actually available to us that we overlook? We might think of just sticking to sidewalks, just sticking to trails, but really we can use those pieces of public infrastructure that have been created for bikes and for the right of way. I mean, we really have access to all of these public places, and we need to take them. We need to kind of put our presence in them also to help others take on the same spirit of walking and hiking in their immediate local areas. So of course, we're doing this differently these days. We're wearing masks and we are staying apart from each other, but we're still creating opportunities for connection. And, whether that's chalk art, like I love this rainbow that I saw the other day on the street, to words of encouragement, growing flowers where we haven't before. There are wonderful ways to encourage our neighbors and ourselves to get outside, stay healthy, and bring that joy and that delight of those great experiences into our everyday lives. I want to read for you in closing just a quote from this book called A Walking Life by Antonia Malchik. I love her. This whole book is worth reading for anyone who is an avid walker or hiker. And I put a piece of the quote here on the slide, but I'm going to read the whole paragraph because I think it's really profound. She says, "Start with longing. Jump in a puddle today. Meander across town. Go for a stroll. Roll among the world. Pace off your frustrations. Tread, stomp, skip, press those feet on the earth wherever you can find it. Walk alone. Walk with a friend. Walk to think and grieve. And then look outward and find ways to give those denied it the freedom to walk. Step together. Walk barefoot on grass. Stride down the sidewalk. Keep walking, even if you've nowhere to go. Step in a puddle again. Watch the ripples you're capable of creating. Leave a story in your footprints." Thank you for your kind attention. I appreciate you being here this evening, and I would love to engage with you on the chat if you have questions. If you have, if you're curious about anything that I presented, I would love to engage with you. So let's dive into that. I'll open the chat here. I see 7 items in the chat. Actually, here, let's go. Let's see here. Jeff, do you have anything that pops out to you?
No, there's a few people where there was a comment about Rayback Collective maybe not reopening.
Yeah.
The bummer. And then
yeah,
a few people were asking about urban hikes in Denver. And as I said in the chat, we do have a book. So Darcy wrote The Best Urban Hikes Boulder. We have the same book that's The Best Urban Hikes Denver as well, by another author.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Here, I'm going to type in, someone was asking about the address for the free urban hikes. I have a PDF I'm happy to send to anybody who buys the book. I will put it in here. Email Best urban hikes Boulder at gmail.com.
And then, Darcy, here's a good one. This is from Louise. What are some good resources for finding urban hiking routes when you find yourself in a new city? Do you start with urban planning offices, or where's your starting point?
No. In fact, so when you're in a new city, and that kind of I don't know if you're referring to travel or that you've recently moved, but it's a great thing to just literally walk out your front door and explore the streets. Often cities will have either walking programs like Boulder does, or there might even be a Walk to Connect chapter there that has routes that are recommended. But when you're in a new city, so what I like to do, as I tried to describe during the part about my travels and what I love about discovering places when I'm traveling, is I start with either a cultural landmark or a natural asset. So I would start in a park or a forest, or some well-known and easily accessible place. So for instance, the endowment lands that I referred to in Vancouver, British Columbia, they're available or accessible by transit. So I could get there on the bus. And then once I'm there are maps posted about how to navigate those trails. So that's one way to do it. Look for the places that have maps posted. A lot of urban trail systems have physical maps in place, but also actually, I mentioned this in the book, and it's a really incredible resource for those of us here in Boulder County. There is an app called, the app is called Boulder, well, there are several actually. Let's see, Boulder Trails. Yeah, it's called the Boulder Area Trails app. So that's a great app that incorporates all of the public trail systems in all of Boulder County. Here in the city of Boulder, there's also the open space and mountain parks system. So they have maps online. Boulder County has maps online. So all, really, I mean, I could go on forever about that, because honestly, it's pretty easy. If you're in a new city, you mentioned, do you start with the urban planning department? No, start with the recreation department. Start with if they have a trail department. Usually Parks and Rec will have some trails online, or just go out to a cultural or a natural asset and see what is mapped for you, or be like Liz Thomas and just be willing to get lost. I mean, these days, it's a wonderful invitation to kind of build that curiosity and that delight about where you are. It's just to give yourself the opportunity to turn a different direction than you normally would, or just see what connects. Or so something I really love to do on all of my urban hikes too is to connect food. So our Lobo Trail hike starts at a recreation center and ends at a coffee shop. That's always a great thing to do. You can use Google Maps, you can use Strava. I mean, there are lots of different ways to kind of discover what's around you. And it doesn't matter what city you're in, there's always a great way to do that. Yay. GPS My City is a good app for urban hiking around the world. Awesome. What else? What else comes up? I really am a proponent of this, connecting assets. That's why I showed those specific maps for the urban hikes that I've developed for the Boulder Ramblers. Whether it's a string of parks, like in 6 Parks in 6 Miles, or something that would start at a coffee shop and end at a park, or start, these days, of course, you want to be mindful of the places that you're trying to connect, but it's also good if you're in a new place. If you've just moved to a new place, it's great to learn how to walk through your local grocery store. That's something that we don't do a whole lot as Americans, and I think it's a great way to get to know your city better and to see if that's really a doable trip. And if it's not, then to provide feedback to your local transportation planning agency. You know, if it's not doable to walk reasonably to your grocery store and back in some interesting and low stress way, then, you know, definitely advocate for that.
Well, is there anybody else that has any questions here? All right, well, I hope everybody will, I'm going to unmute everybody at once, and I hope you'll join me in giving Darcy a round of applause and a thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Sherry, I got your message. I'll send you an email with the link and make sure you have everything you need there. Is that all right? Oh, you're still muted, Sherry. Oh, that's my fault. That's my fault. Okay, you're fixed.
Okay. No, I said I want the Denver one too. I don't have that one either.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll email you a link to both.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Darcy. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it.
All right.
Good.
Now it's back to the two of us. Well,
Okay. I hope that went well. It felt a little rough, but